Ladies and gentlemen, please silence your phones and hush your babies. The show is about to start.
I offer my personal welcome to this
Nemo
and Cole Conference
halftime
show.
Welcome everyone, it is that time of year again. Welcome back to the Nemo & Co conference halftime show. I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to have just sat through that session of conference. And with so much going on in the church at the moment, I'm delighted to hear your thoughts, your opinions, and to share what I and my guest have to offer you. And who is my guest, you may ask? Who would it be? If you've been watching this for the past few conferences, you'll know exactly who my guest is today, because as is tradition, we're starting off this conference strong with Mr. Loyal Opposition himself, Peter Bleakley.
Hello, it's
Hey, Peter,
brilliant
how
to
you
be
doing?
here again. Let's do this thing. I'm very well, thank you.
Wonderful. We have lots of people in the chat that we all recognize and know. Welcome, Doug Vincent. You'll be seeing some of him later. It is Jammy Dodger weekend indeed. Nanette O'Neill. I have Jammy Dodgers somewhere.
Got
We're
mine too.
Repping the Jammy Dodgers.
I was being healthy last time, but my wife has flitted off to Spain to do a yoga retreat, so I'm being naughty while she's away.
I was in Spain recently. Great trip. Wonderful. Wonderful country. Beautiful beaches. A nice place to relax before you then come back and do all this stuff. So, had a beautiful time, and now I'm here with all of you. So, someone's pointed out already, and Ivan, don't jump the gun. Actually, don't jump the gun, it's fine. Tracy Browning began the butt kissing of the new prophet almost immediately when she started speaking. It's true. Tracy Browning, as we'll get to, gave us our first quote of the new prophet. But before all that, we want to know one important thing, and that is who is winning with Jesus, Joe, or Russell? We'll get to why Jesus' number is so high later on in the program. But there is not one, but two.
No show for Joe. Oh my gosh.
Because
that
Dallin
sent a chill down my spine.
Dallin is on the board, and of course he is. He is about to become the new president of the church. So why else? Why not? Why not start? But of course, we will have tributes to Russell M. Nelson throughout, and we'll get to how they wanted to handle that. So Nelson's going to get quite a few quotes. Probably this will be his last conference of getting a high number. Before then, obviously, we'll have the new king, the new kid on the block, and he will be the one who's behind must be smooched. So let us get on with it. Henry Biaring was conducting, which was lovely. And he explained to us about the apostolic interregnum. Now, do I have that here? I do not have that here, but what I do have is Dallin H. Oakes' entrance into the conference.
There he is. He's being propped up a bit. He really is getting old, bless him.
He's 93.
I've kind of been hoping for this moment that he would be in charge just to see what would happen, like morbid curiosity. And I hope his sort of mental determination and personality is still there rather than just fading now he's incredibly old. Because it is going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. I think a lot of people I know are going to kind of have to swallow hard before declaring that he is the prophet, seer, and revelator to the world.
Yeah,
and God's mouthpiece on earth. So it's, but in a way we've got a pause. It is kind of weird having this chill bit where it is the 12 in charge. So they didn't rush to announce the first presidency. They haven't announced a new apostle.
This is no solemn assembly in respect to Nelson, which we'll get to in a minute. But look, there's a man who's happy to be in that position. Look at that. Look at that face. He's a happy boy right now.
There's a little smile. Look. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's we had the entrance of him, and then we will get to. He talks about nothing has changed. Let's throw that up there.
Brothers and sisters, we meet as we mourn the death of our beloved President Russell M. Nelson. I speak to you as the president of the Quorum of the 12. in which position I have been sustained in each of our ward, stake, and general conferences for the past 7.5 years.
Not unanimously, though, Dallin. You know that. I know that. We've exchanged emails over that fact. Don't get ahead of yourself. Carry on.
We now go forward with this semi-annual general conference, proceeding as planned and with speakers and music assigned by President Nelson after months of preparation. The only additions are my introductory explanation and my speaking in place of President Nelson in the closing session on Sunday afternoon. This is the first time in about 75 years that a church president has died a few days before a general conference. That has called for us to plan how we could hold the vital leadership meetings in connection with general conference, as well as this general session of conference, at the same time scheduling his funeral as soon as possible.
Yep.
President Nelson understood the value of general conference to provide direction to the saints in the coming months. We honor him by following the planned conference schedule he approved.
So even in death, Nelson is being honored and not being usurped or overshadowed because they're keeping the conference program that he asked for. Which is why then we get now Let Us Rejoice as one of the hymns, which you think he's just died and now we're getting now Let Us. That seems inappropriate, but it was the hymn that was already chosen. So Dan
everyone
is making clear here that nothing has changed. He's still the president of the Quorum of the 12. This is being presided over by a quorum of 14, essentially, and that it's business as usual, really.
In this time of grief, we have already held a meeting to pay tribute to President Russell M. Nelson.
I love how it's called a meeting.
Before our general conference meetings, and then scheduled his funeral as soon as possible after conference. All of this has been done with the approval of the family of President Nelson and the Quorum of the 12.
Oh, so the family and the Quorum of the 12, okay. Not just his family.
So it's okay, don't panic,
Since
anyone.
all of us who have been assigned to speak in general conference would like to devote our assigned time to paying a personal tribute to President Nelson, we have therefore asked that all of our conference speakers hold any such tributes to a minimum, deferring elaborate tributes for the funeral, which we have already begun to plan. My own brief tribute, suitable to this conference and to the tributes we have already paid, is this. I love Russell M. Nelson and have learned more about the gospel and gospel leadership from my long friendship and association with him than from any other leader I have personally known.
Okay. So all that is to say, business as usual. Everyone keep your tributes to Russell M. Nelson to a minimum, please, and thank you. And that doesn't stop people from quoting him, though, incessantly. So there we go. We had the Oaks, nothing changes. Which brings up the question.
And that was
Peter.
sweet. He was a bit tearful with his little tribute there, and that was lovely. Oh.
It does raise the question, though. So Oaks's funeral is on the 7th of October.
Yes.
Which is after conference, which means that currently there's no president of the church. And that could create some challenges. I'm sure the army of lawyers at Curtin McConkie have made sure the church's assets are very safe until there's a new president of the church. But it raises the question
legally,
then,
legally, he probably already is, as a legal entity. Dallin Oaks is the president of the church. Yeah. That's the foregone conclusion.
He's the president of the corporation.
Yeah.
But because he, as we've discussed many, many times, isn't legitimately the president of the church until he's had a sustaining vote, until there's been the common consent of the people. That means there's now going to be 6 months where he's president of the church before a common consent vote can be held, before a solemn assembly can be held. Because they're not going to wait until the next conference. They're going to wait until after Nelson's funeral, because even in death, again, he won't be overshadowed. He won't let there be a new president before he's had his funeral. What do you think to that?
And it would be, well, absolutely. But this is very dear to my heart, because one of the 3 questions I kept asking my stake president through my excommunication process was, why is it that they choose and ordain in secret the first presidency, when you'd never do that for a bishopric or a stake presidency or an elders quorum presidency or a deacons quorum presidency, violating Doctrine and Covenants 2065 that says there must be a vote. And he refused to answer it. I included that question in my letter appealing my excommunication to the first presidency. They also refused to answer that question. And the problem is, this completely destroys the legitimacy of the first presidencies of the church for over a century. None of them actually have authority. They usurped it in private. They did not follow the steps that are laid out in the scriptures for authorizing themselves. And even if you count a farcical sustaining by the membership months after they're actually already ordained, I mean, what if everyone voted opposed? Would they resign? Seriously, it's a farce. It just makes a joke of common consent. None of them actually have the authority. And what about all the decisions that they make, the callings they give, the blessings they give, the ordinations they perform under their authority as the first presidency before anyone's voted? It's all illegitimate. And I think in a way that's part of the reason perhaps they didn't rush and do it now, because it'd be the first time in ages there was a vote before they got set apart, and then that might make people wonder, why hasn't that been happening all along?
So Grace Ettim's in the comments saying, who is the next prophet? So just to make that abundantly clear, there are some people twisting themselves in knots trying to act like this is some sort of mystery, and I don't know whether that's for people to reassure themselves about the idea that it is basically just the next senior apostle. But it's going to be download jokes unless he pops his clogs between now and the next time. So
the exciting things are, who does he call as councillors? Because there'll be a lot of politics in that. And the majority view at the moment in the chatter seems to be definitely Bednar.
Yes.
They also are considering, will he release Eyre, like as a mercy, give him a break? I think he won't. Because Eyre actually has seemed quite perky the last couple of years. There was a period where he looked like he was having grand mal seizures the whole time. But now, he was quite fluent and whatever with dealing with conducting today. So he's not looking like he's lost it. But also, I was thinking today, if they did release him as a mercy because of his old age, that would set a terrible precedent, because he's still in the line of succession to be prophet. And if you admit that he can't serve as a councillor, how on earth could you pull him out of retirement later to be the president of the church? So I do think these men are very much trapped. They have to be seen to be performing right to the end.
We have been left with the question, who's going to fill the gap? Because there's currently 14 men, there should be 15. So I wondered whether they would make the announcement through the sustaining of church officers. I can't remember how they announced Patrick Kieran, and it was only 6 months ago, so I should remember. Well, no, because they announced him before the conference. Because they wanted to fill that vacancy. So let's get to the sustaining of church officers. Because we got an opposing vote and we heard it. So everyone,
we did
turn up the volume a little bit.
It's been a while.
Listen very carefully, and here we go.
That we sustain members of the quorum of the 12 apostles as prophets, seers, and revelators. All in favor, please manifest it.
Listen out.
Contrary, if any, by the same sign.
Opposed. There we go. We had one. We had an
didn't actually hear
vote.
it just then. Did you
hear
have the audio? No.
Yeah. It's like
we built this thing up.
Opposed. Yeah. No, it was there. You could hear it in the background.
Definitely there. Yeah.
So we had an opposing vote, which I wondered whether they cut the audio in years past. But no, it seems it's all there.
I think usually when people do vote oppose, they're quite public about it. They'll go on social media afterwards and post it. That's happened before. So perhaps we probably haven't missed it. If it did happen at some point, people would chatter. But yeah, it happens. And that was meant to be you, wasn't it, Nemo? You know, when you were going to go and vote opposed to Dallin, but then they excommunicated you. So you can't,
Instead,
neither of us can vote now.
Yeah, I got denied tickets to go to conference because they thought I would vote opposed, and that might be embarrassing for them. Yeah, even though they ask. So you know.
Yeah.
But the question
someone else
remains,
has stepped up, so bless them. They've
do we
shown that
have
opposition is real.
Yeah, do we have a new apostle? No, which means that this entire conference now is essentially like an open audition. It's sort of like everyone's now trying to really put their best foot forward, give their best talks, put on their best show, a little bit of peacocking to say, hey, look, I can be the man you need me to be. I can be who you want. In fact, including a man called Brik, who had a voice so sultry, I thought when he said, and we'll get to it later, when he said, remember who you are, it sounded so much nearly like James Earl Jones as Mufasa that I thought, you know, okay, this guy's going for an actual impression as well as a quote, because that was a fantastic baritone or bass voice, depending. It's probably more of a bass voice, that man, but yeah, beautiful voice. Anyway, we have another game to play, everyone. It's a little game we like to call Where's Jim?
Where's Jim Bennett?
Yes. Anytime the Tabernacle Choir are providing the music for this session of conference, we keep an eye out for our friend Jim Bennett, who sings as a second tenor in the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, or sorry, the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square, although they'll probably get their name changed back under Oaks, I reckon. I think he'll give it a couple of years to let it all cool off, and then slowly we'll just bring it back. But yeah, the question is, did we see Jim? Did any of you in the audience see Jim? We did see Jim. There's a cracking shot of Jim right there.
We've got a whole Jim with dramatic perspective. Last time it was only a half Jim, so it's a total Jim now. Awesome.
Yes, a full, complete Jim. So Jim, if you're watching, great to see you.
We love you, dude.
Should we actually get into the talks now? Because you know I've got to do 5 sessions of this, so let's keep it cracking on. Gary E. Stevenson. A talk about kindness and peacemaking, and straight in addressing the terrible sort of shooting and incident of arson at the meeting house in hang on, Michigan. There we go. Yeah. So he addressed it briefly, and then he gave a talk all about trying to be peacemakers. Overall, I liked the theme and the intent of his talk. He starts by talking about a teenager at the Sea of Galilee, and he's kind of talking to what they would call the rising generation of the church. And then got a quote in that I think that will get put on a shareable slide. Sermon on the Mount moments, talking about moments when you hear the teachings of Jesus and then let them sink into your heart and actually go and do something about them. And then he gave a 3-point plan. Peter, do you want to walk us through it?
Yeah, sure. So he was talking about, initially he gave an example of how there was a situation of some family anonymously out there who were having conflict with a grumpy adult of some kind. So there's no specifics about who that was. Was it a neighbor or someone at school or what? But they kind of decided not to take the challenge of just being nice in return, of replying to all this negativity every time with something positive and bridge building, and it softened the relationship. And I think this is lovely. You know, it's about the idea of diplomacy, that personal contacts can help overcome differences. I think this works lots of ways. You know, the main reason people start to become allies of LGBTQ people and protective or overcome racism is you start to engage as a friend with people from a group or that you're in conflict with, or that there's some hostility there. And your human contact changes that. I don't think that always necessarily works when you're dealing with more important issues, but we can get into that discussion later. So his peacemaking 3-point plan was to have a contention-free home zone. Good sort of little catchphrase. To do digital bridge building, which means don't send it if it won't build a bridge, and to repair and reunite. And there's always this tension around this topic of which Ward Radio would have a lot to say about, and Conor Boyack and others from the sort of the more conservative right wing, sort of apologist-ish adjacent branch, where they actually get very frustrated as well with Mormon niceness, with the toxic positivity culture that you have. You avoid the issues in order to just smooth things over and keep things peaceful and nice in how you communicate with people. And the most important thing is that people think Mormons are nice and friendly, but you don't really address any issues that way. So these are lovely ideas to do with peace in the home and reducing contention. And I remember my poor dad trying to do my parents doing family home evenings to get us to stop arguing with each other. So good luck with the contention-free home zone. But
yeah, I think sometimes. Sorry,
Mm.
just to speak to that for a moment.
Yeah,
Contention
come on.
can be this quite
Mm.
unhealthy dynamic within Mormonism and within Mormon families. This idea
Yeah.
that any sort of disagreement is contention, is therefore of the devil. And you can end up with home environments where people don't address or resolve issues. They just
Yeah.
press them down and ignore them and move on and pretend like everything's okay, because they're told that being contentious is of the devil, and so that's going to cause some sort of issues. When in reality, what people need to do sometimes is just have the argument or have the discussion, bring up the difficult thing, and then be able to actually move on because they can properly resolve it.
Yeah, my mum was very good at that. She was dealing with my passive aggressive dad, but she was quite fiery. So growing up, we had good role models of both approaches. I've just had someone ring my bell. I don't quite know why. So I will need to.
Okay.
Sorry, just
I shall
duck
dismiss
up.
you. Be gone. Okay. Peter's bell has been rung. He shall be back. And in the meantime, we'll crack on with the slides. We will move on to Tracy Y. Browning, but before we move on to Tracy Y. Browning, I will remind people that super chats are available. If you want to make sure that I definitely see your message, you can send a super chat, and that is helping to fund these halftime shows, because we have no sponsor, funnily enough. No one wants to. Huel isn't coming in and sponsoring the Nemo & Co. Conference halftime show. Crazy though it may seem to you all, there are no sponsors here. And it is the kind donation and support of you, the viewers, that keeps this show going. So thank you very much to those who are already supporting me on a monthly basis through Patreon, Donor Box, etc. And yeah, let's crack on. So Tracy Y. Browning, normally I really enjoy her talks, and I kind of did this time as well. I enjoy her talks because she doesn't do the primary voice. And she made it very clear, actually, that she wasn't someone that grew up in primary. I do believe she's a convert, if I remember correctly. So she's coming in talking about how effective teaching primary kids primary songs is, and how effective that is to, to get these thoughts and things in their head, while not having directly experienced that herself. And I think that does kind of show at one point in this talk. Peter, are you back? Give me a thumbs up, please, backstage. Yes, okay, Peter is back. He wasn't gone for long, guys. You don't have to continue to deal with just me anymore. He's back. I know he's your favorite. Right, here you go, Peter. Tracy Browning, what do you make of this talk?
Absolutely. So it was really sweet, and I think so. I just keep thinking where we're considering that we're losing young people in the church in droves, just how utterly boring church is, and how very rarely now anyone actually speaks to the children in general conference. I don't know that it was that much better in the past, and this wasn't really directed towards children either. And I think that's a real lack in our general conferences. They don't directly speak to young people or children, and you could throw some more of that in. But she was at least talking about a generic principle of how you can indoctrinate the kids with the songs, and she was saying it in a lovely, positive, sweet way. But I think, but as well as talking about that, we got a couple of slides there just about the status of women and their voice in the church, and
just before we
the
put that
situation
slide up,
they're in.
I want to say that this talk gave me reminders of, and I just put a video up about this recently, Joy D. Jones's talk about how to indoctrinate your kids, essentially. This reminded me of that, in the sense of, I think this is almost the message that Joy D. Jones was trying to put across, was the idea that you teach children things, you get them engaged at a young age, and that will help them out. Instead, you had Joy D. Jones talking about kids not getting far enough in, and it's just terrible. Anyway, yes, Tracy Brownlee is not paid. She works as the director of Church Publishing Services Department. Peter, speak to the impact of not being full-time on female leadership voices.
So this means then that all the general female leaders of the church are doing what they do part-time, which severely limits their impact. It limits the time they can spend on what they're doing. It limits how much they can actually speak and meet and greet and be with the people. Occasionally there'll be some feature about a member of the Relief Society presidency visiting a developing world country and ministering and that sort of thing. But they're already handicapped that they cannot have a presence that counts. They cannot be at that many stake conferences or area meetings because they also have to support themselves if they're not being supported by a wealthy partner. And so she's also got a full-time job, and it's similar for the young men's presidency, where they all have to work, and if they're not filthy rich already, like Lund was, Brad Wilcox has to be sort of bringing in the money as he was teaching maturation to the teenagers of Utah or working at BYU and so on. And it takes their eye off the ball because they're meant to have a global role. And something that really knocks me is Dallin Oaks or President Nelson or someone was talking about how they don't really call on the women very much because it takes a long time to prepare a talk. Like if you're going to do something significant, they offer this as an excuse for hardly any women speaking in general conference, that because they're part-time, therefore obviously we don't want to overburden them with having too many talks to give at
they
conference.
also said to
and also
Katie,
they're not invited to most of the meetings.
They said to Katie Ludlow Rich, they sent her a message basically saying that, the wives of the prophets and apostles aren't authorized to speak. They don't hold church leadership positions, so they can't speak, which means the pool of people to call to speak is small, and we wouldn't want to overburden them. And I think I did a response to that a little while back where I pointed out that people have spoken in general conference before who aren't even members of the church. Women who aren't even members of the church have spoken in conference before. I think it was the early 1900s, someone who was part of a large child action charity, the director of a large child action charity, a woman from New York, I think, spoke at general conference. I'll have to look into all that. But when you think about it like that, all of a sudden, hang on, that excuse rings hollow. And a lot of their excuses ring hollow when it comes to women's involvement in the church.
It's an intentional and systemic hampering. And what's the contrast? We had that quote from one of the Relief Society presidencies saying our church gives women, she chose the words fairly carefully, wider experience and authority than any other church. Yes, we have women in lots of roles, but for goodness sake, the Church of England, a global organization, has just appointed its first new female Archbishop of Canterbury.
J. Annette Dennis. Is J. Annette Dennis? I hope J. Annette Dennis is watching this broadcast right now. Doubt she is. She's probably quite busy, but I hope she is, because she said as the church empowers women greater than any other religious institution that she knows of. I'm hoping that this will bring to J. Annette Dennis's awareness and knowledge the Church of England, the Anglican Church, because they have just appointed an international. Yes, their new Archbishop of Canterbury is a woman, simply put.
Sarah Mullally.
Welcome,
nurse,
Sarah.
I think. So fantastic, and it's laughable in the 21st century that they're still trying to get away with this sort of 1950s nostalgia regarding the roles of women still. And also, just a final point on that, one of the we have a friend who was at a meeting with one of these new roles for women to kind of be on the area authority level. I can't remember their full name. It's totally boring, like generic something advisor.
Area advisors or something.
Yeah. And she was asked, well, how often do you actually meet with the area presidency? And also, and she said, actually, hardly ever. And it's the same for the Relief Society general leadership. They might occasionally meet with one apostle who's delegated to liaise with them. But this idea of councils that they're promoting in wards and stakes, and most of them are doing it now, where you involve the women regularly in decision making and deliberating, and counsel with them.
Mhm.
The general authorities are not practicing. So this is why we will probably again only have 3 women speak in this conference if they carry on as usual, and why these women are not
Mhm.
in a sense that well known amongst the global church, because
Yeah.
we hardly ever see them because they have day jobs.
There's an interesting
It's the
point
system.
from the chat that has come up. We have a comment saying that the argument that comes up when mentioning the Archbishop or other women leaders in other churches is, well, they don't have the priesthood, so their power isn't real. I suppose the pushback to
She
that,
didn't
though,
say
would be
power.
exactly.
Yeah.
She talks about responsibility, and I think regardless
Leadership.
of how you view the leadership or the power of those other individuals, what you would see from the organizations that are empowering these people within their organization is that within that organization, the Archbishop of Canterbury's power is very real, right? You can try and undermine the entire Anglican Church as a whole in terms of what you think of it, and the church will try to do that, but that you can't. You almost. I know that that's what people will be saying. Well, their power isn't real, so we're still empowering women more. But the way I would push back on that apologetic would be to say that actually their power is very real to the organization in which they exist. So we're still not doing as much as other organizations are doing for their women.
And someone's just pointed out in the comments that Community of Christ now has a female president.
Yes,
as well.
indeed.
So our cousins can do it.
And she has the priesthood in as far as, from a Mormon perspective. Yeah, thank you very much to Daddy Todd for his super chat. Love the half times, Nemo. Well done. Thank you. You are so welcome. And thank you very much for being here. So, yeah, we have some of the indoctrination points here. A song learned at the age of 6 can stay with us and come back decades later. And it can often come back in the form of thought-terminating cliches. Primary songs can often be those things and that bring up guilt and all that sort of stuff. And then she talked about in time children can choose to tune themselves to Jesus Christ. And this is where I think the fact that she's a convert kind of comes into it, because what she doesn't necessarily understand is that the use of repetitive music makes it less of a choice. It creates this cognitive preloading. If you're constantly singing these songs about when I am baptized, you're going to then think that's the right thing to do when you're presented with the choice to get baptized, because it's in there. It's this earworm. It's there over and over again. But I
did rebel.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things I was cynical about in the church was singing "I Hope They Call Me on a Mission." Right. And literally as a small child, I was like, I hope they don't call me on a mission. It doesn't look any fun at all.
Would you mind?
I still did it and had a great time, but I didn't. I was literally, that was the beginning of my rebellion, was being like, they're trying to indoctrinate me. Why would I want to do that?
Can you have a quick read of
they're
this
trying to condition me?
for me, Peter?
Yeah, primary music is one of God's most tender tools for planting the seeds of testimony in the hearts of the Saviour's youngest disciples.
Yeah, so that kind of is in sum what her talk was, as well as Jesus still wants me for a sunbeam, or wants us for a sunbeam, which is cute, which is lovely. Let's move on to the man who single-handedly ruined the game of Jesus, Joe, or Russell, and Jesus, Joe, or Dallin, by being an absolute powerhouse. I don't think a man has quoted Christ this much in a general conference talk. Like quoted, again, not mentioned, Terrell Givens, I see you, trying to make me look bad. Or was it Brian Hales? One of the two, trying to say, oh, these people who are saying that, Russell M. Nelson is mentioned more than Jesus are simply wrong. I've never made that claim. I've counted direct quotes. But Ronald M. Barcelos has made it very difficult for Russell M. Nelson to win this year, because 14 quotes was what this man brought us. 14 direct quotes of Jesus Christ himself, which is great. That's what we love. That's what we love to see in a talk. And I don't think we've had that many quotes since that talk Oakes gave, where he was basically giving me the middle finger through general conference, where he was like, right, okay, fine, I will quote Jesus Christ 40 times. Yeah. If you don't remember that one, go back and watch it. Let's talk about Barcelos. Let's talk about what he had to say.
It's a really interesting talk, because he literally went through all the cliche Sunday school answers. If you think about the structure of it, it had it all: obey the commandments, read the scriptures, sustain the leaders. You know, I mean, if you want like a summary of what Mormons think the religion is, this was a great talk for that. That it just trotted through, but also it's one of several that we had where they just stumble into metaphors to do with treasures and money that are
Yes.
completely oblivious to their
Mhm.
hypocrisy on this front, you know, which is
Yeah.
wonderful. So his first sort of point was he was talking about spiritual tests
Yes.
to assess
He
your
gave us
focus,
3
your
spiritual
priorities.
tests.
Yes. So the first is where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Jesus taught where we choose to spend our time and our attention, as well as what motivates us to do what we do, says a lot about our
And it's the
heart.
way he
And I thought,
delivered that,
yes,
where
it
he was
does.
like, yeah, what motivates us to do what we do says a lot about our hearts and where we spend our time and attention. It's like, okay, right. So the church spends a lot of time and attention on its investment portfolio and on buying property and real estate and making money. So I wrote in here, and then Peter put an actual graphic in, but I just wrote cough 250 billion cough. And that's the holdings of Ensign Peak Advisors at the end of the fourth quarter of
tithing.
2023, right? Look how much they have.
Mhm.
Look how much tithing money they have invested in Microsoft, Apple, Amazon. What's the next one down? Nvidia?
Oh, Nvidia, yep.
Yeah.
And Alphabet, which is Google,
Mhm.
I think, and then Meta, which is which is Zuckerberg and Facebook, United Health. It varies a bit, you know. Sometimes some of these go up and down, but all the IT infrastructure companies and social media, yet they still can't get their own social media functional. It's hysterical. I was thinking that today, just like the idea that they use. I was re-listening to our reviews of last time, and that they're using AI now as a tool
Mm.
to help people navigate the handbook of instructions. It's like, this is all because you still don't have a search engine that works on your own website. I mean, it's mad. So yeah, where your treasure is, your heart will be also. Many called, few are chosen. Do I make the Savior a priority? Then we had number 2 is obey God's commandments. This is all the standard primary and Sunday school answers. Diligently study the scriptures and seek revelation. And then 4 is thoughts and words. Am I foster? And I thought was quite interesting. He slightly touched on what could be a mental health message, but maybe not. Am I fostering negative thoughts about others or myself? And you know, so. And then he kind of finished with the Alma guilt trip, you know, just the
Yeah.
icing on this cliche cake of, you know, have you experienced that mighty change of heart? If not, there's something wrong with you, you know. So there we go. So that was all the usual Sunday school
Mhm.
answers, explanations for everything. This is how it works. But I think what was also good, it was either him or someone else actually. Yeah, it was someone else who later comes up with a way of sort of judge. It was Uchtdorf, actually. We'll get to
Mhm.
his talk.
Cool.
Sort of had a
Can we
slightly
jump
different take
to
on how you judge yourself. Yeah.
Can we jump to the man
What a
who's
name.
got my favorite name of anyone that's ever spoken at a conference, I think, ever?
Boy.
Brik. And this is the
Oh,
man. This
yes.
is the man with the sultry voice as well. So it was giving me
He's
everything
got the
I
whole
needed. Really,
package.
he's there,
This is
including a cushy former
romance
white
novel
collar
hero.
job because he worked
Mhm.
for the church, BYU Marriott Center Advisory Boards, businessman.
Mm.
First thing I saw
Yeah.
when I googled his name to get his picture to put it in the slideshow, businessman, right there.
BA in finance and an
Yep.
MBA.
That's what we love to see from our church
More
leaders.
businessmen.
More businessmen.
Mhm.
So he tells this story about his daughter who was
Lost her job and was becoming homeless. I mean, that was unusual.
and then
Yeah.
he was someone said I spelled his name wrong. I think I spelled it like actual brick, and I think it's just with a K.
Oh, it's BRIK. Yeah.
You know what?
Either way, it's sexy.
The mind sees what it wants to see, I suppose. So he talked about this story, which in essence was just comfort, then convert. It was like, hang on, no. Comfort them, be nice to them, then try and shoehorn the scriptures into a solution in their lives. don't just go straight to the scriptures. Be nice to them first. He did quote a woman though. He quoted Susan R. Porter. But then he quoted Patrick Kieran. But what's funny is he quoted Patrick Kieran, who was quoting Russell M. Nelson within his quote. So Nelson still gets a quote there. I remember that one from last time.
Is that a half point on your system?
No, that's a full point.
Quoting?
That's a full point. If someone, it's still there. You wrote this one, Fatherhood of God and Childhood of a Father. No mention of Heavenly Mother or Heavenly Parents.
No. So that several of these speakers were talking about this Nelsonite teaching about your identity as a child of God is what will help you cope with literally anything and fix any problem in your life. But for a long time that a lot of people were evolving to talking about heavenly parents. But since, as you said, the kibosh has been put on by Renland saying, you know, it's arrogant to want to know more about Heavenly Mother and we don't know anything. It seems that's really put a chill on doing that. All of this is male, male, male. Your relationship with your father, the plan of your father. He's the one to thank for everything. There is no role for women in the next life. This idea that we have so many godheads in the church, you kind of don't notice it till you think about it. There's Father, Son, and Holy Ghost at baptism. There is Father, Son, and Michael or Adam, God, in the temple endowments. In how we talk about eternal families becoming like God, it's very female inclusive. It's the father and the mother, and they don't really talk about which of their children will get sacrificed to be the savior. But in reality, the model they have of the deity, no women. It's father, 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 father. You don't even mention that. And one of our most important unique selling points of Heavenly Mother, which even the kind of conservative apologists for the church regularly mention, that we have a Heavenly Mother doctrine that could be a massive win. Not a peep of it in this whole conference at any point. So that really struck me. I didn't catch that one. You explained that one.
So he put this quote out here where he said, seek validation vertically, not horizontally, which is this idea of you need to seek validation from God, not from those around you, which is, again, kind of sowing an in-group, out-group behavior, but not even in-group, out-group in terms of members of the church and those outside the church. It's literally just God and then anyone else. And kind of pushing people to not consult with others for validation, not to seek validation through anything other than direct to God, which is always great until you realize that there's a specific group of people who claim to speak for God, and there is the problem. He says,
one thing I liked about sorry, go on.
Okay, Americans, please tell me if this is just a Utah thing, but it kind of made me giggle. This was pointed out to me, and once it was pointed out to me, I couldn't unhear it. That instead of saying Enos, it says Enos. Enos. People tell me in the comments, please, is that a particularly Utah way of saying Enos? Is that an American thing generally? Enos.
Oh dear.
Sorry.
One thing I did like about him, no, he showed some empathy and humanity because he talked about how, if possible, you know, have your formal prayers speaking out loud. But he then acknowledged that as you're being busy being a parent and wrangling the children, he said the luxury of a quiet closet and calm preparation might be not about to happen anytime soon.
Yes.
Therefore, some of our urgent prayers while busy with life are just as important and powerful. And I love that. I really like that message, because a lot of the messaging from the old fusties is you can only really approach God on his throne in a dark room, literally in a suit with the curtains drawn on your knees, and you're lucky if he listens. And that was much more about God is actually going to be with you while you're having a busy day. I like that God. That's one that makes sense to me.
Right. So sorry, that is a consensus from the chat saying that it is an American thing. So Enos, thank you for that. And then there's one final thing from this talk, which is remember who you are. Right. Is he comes in with a sexy voice, like his best Mufasa impression. And he quoted, he may not have been intentionally quoting Lion King, but it's there. It's absolutely there.
The
So there we
amazing
are.
Megan of Generally Unquotable and some
Mhm.
others have been, I think it's Megan on there, have been pointing out recently, there's been some chatter online that people shared their experience that if they accidentally overpaid tithing online, like put an extra zero, it was impossible for them to get that money back. You
Ooh.
know, the stake presidents tried and they just wouldn't give it back. And in his talk, Mr. Eyre talked about how he accidentally pressed not recommended after doing an interview with someone for
Yes.
a
Yeah,
temple
yeah.
working job. And then he was sort of getting, pleading with fixing that error.
He's told
But it
there's
just kind
nothing
of
you've
really
done that can't be fixed. Well, apparently, yeah, paying too
it
much
can't be
tithing
fixed. Yeah.
can't be
If you pay
fixed.
too much tithing, that can't be fixed, even if it's an accident. You'd have to go to court
Yeah,
and fail probably.
indeed.
So I thought that was quite funny in
So,
light of
okay,
recent chatter
let's get
online.
on to a man who
Yeah.
also thinks he's very good at spotting small mistakes and not letting accidents and errors happen. We have Kelly R.
Oh,
Johnson,
good
General
Lord.
Authority 70 in the Asia Area Presidency, who has served in the Church Audit Committee.
Hmm.
So interesting. All right.
Can I just
Okay.
say he literally looks like, and this is bad, I accept it.
Go on.
He looks like one of the goblins in Harry Potter at the bank.
Oh, Peter. Oh,
He
Peter.
does though. Look, he's got the nose and
He
everything.
looks like he's from
He's a
Gringotts. Is
Harry
that what you're
Potter
saying?
bank. Yes,
All right. Well,
which is completely appropriate.
The scriptures, I come across words that really catch my attention, primarily because they have special meaning as a result of experiences I have had during my life. I spent my career working as a forensic accountant. With that background, the word reconcile has caught my attention as I read the scriptures. My job was to reconcile reported amounts with financial records by applying accounting, auditing, and investigative skills. In other words, my goal was to align the financial reports with the underlying financial documents to ensure accuracy and validity. I made diligent efforts to resolve discrepancies, and it was common that significant time was dedicated to resolving even very small discrepancies.
Even very small ones. So setting
Oh
up a
my
financial
giddy
structure,
aunt.
setting up a financial structure in which you create 13 clone LLCs in order to lead the investing public and the American Securities and Exchange Commission into thinking that you have less money than you actually do. He didn't think to fix that.
Or to declare to the IRS that the church only earns £1 million or dollars rather in income for tax
Yeah,
purposes.
but L. Todd Budge was like, "Oh, we it wasn't an accurate answer. It wasn't meant to be an accurate answer. It was simply meant to indicate we didn't feel we needed to fill in that box."
Oh my gosh, Gringotts Gremlin was like, this was the
He was
most
asleep at the wheel.
shameless bullshit I've ever heard. Utterly shameless. And again, the tone deafness, because if these people are at all serious about holding on to members, they must know that the top 3 or 4 talking points, for reasons long experienced, faithful members of the church become disillusioned and leave, are finding out what they're actually doing with the money and the lies around that, drives people out of the church, certainly makes them stop paying tithing, and all the other things. And you wouldn't know any of it from what they use as metaphors, from the example. He starts with that about being scrupulous in accounting correctly. No shame, no
Jesus didn't have to
acknowledgement
show his bankroll.
whatsoever.
Some guy out there says,
No.
Jesus didn't have to show it. Also, Modern Ape is saying that they just finished watching RFM and his halftime show, and they're now over here. So welcome to all those joining us from RFM. I hope he treated you well. We shall try to treat you just as well. Welcome all. But yes, it's absolutely shameless the way he's dealing with all this. He then starts talking about cherry trees and the shaking of cherry trees, and he's talking specifically about ethylene and the way that it weakens the bond between cherry stems and the tree itself. And something about the way he said ethylene, I don't know, took me back to my days of university lectures. It was just equal parts kind of slightly boring and information I didn't quite need for him to make the broader point. But he was trying to just put that in, I guess, maybe.
He's an accountant. Don't expect him
yes.
to be imaginative, bless him.
No, I won't. I can.
Oh.
I've given the fact that he was involved with the church when the church has been taking part in some pretty shady financial stuff. It would seem. I wouldn't expect him to be creative or even particularly
I'll
attentive to
take
detail.
that back. He is good at creative accounting. Aha! Boom.
Very good.
Drop.
Okay. Yes. So talk me through this. Real quick.
When he said, so when he said this, that's the church. The church could change. The church could save itself, but it's reached a point of stubbornness, like he was talking about in people's spiritual
Where
journey.
it's unwilling
where
to
they're
change.
just unwilling,
Yeah.
unwilling to change. I just thought that you're talking about yourself, mate.
That's
and then
very
he
good.
went on to talk about how to make and keep covenants and keep that connection strong, and it leads to unshaken faith. And I just thought, that's not our experience, mate.
Yeah.
Our faith will not be unshaken, however much we're devoted to Jesus and covenants, if you're lying, if the church is stealing, if the church is perpetrating, covering up abuse. It gets shaken right off. The attachment to the church, maybe not attachment to Jesus, but it certainly shakes off our attachment to the church. This idea that you can achieve a point where you're indestructible, you can only do that by not thinking, by ignoring the evidence, by losing empathy for the victims of what the church does that harms and exploits people. So again, this magical worldview that if you just try hard enough, you'll be indestructible, all your prayers will be answered, you'll be healed, the miracles will just flow. It's all nonsense. It's wishful thinking. I just thought that was another wishful thinking statement. I got quite triggered. That's not what I experienced. I held tight to my covenants, and so did Nemo.
Right.
And we're still practicing them technically as well.
Let's get to Dieter Uchtdorf.
Oh, yes.
Uchtdorf.
Hallelujah.
Okay. Hallelujah. I always breathe a sigh of relief when Uchtdorf comes to the stage. I did have some disagreements with what he had to say today, and there's some good stuff, some bad stuff, but it was definitely not the worst talk I've ever heard by far. So he jumped straight into a Boeing 747 flight simulator. He's like, right, I'm on it. Katie Ash says, did you know he was a pilot? You know what? That would explain why he jumped into the flight simulator now, wouldn't it?
It would. And a Democrat, as someone said.
Yes, and a Democrat. He got in a little bit of trouble for that, I think. But, it would not be a Dieter Uchtdorf talk. For those that are new here, would not be a Dieter Uchtdorf talk if he did not talk about the fact that he was a pilot. Yeah, he was a pilot, guys. He absolutely was. Okay. He gave a little tagline, discipleship takes self-discipline. And he kind of got in on this idea that faith takes constant work. It's like a hamster wheel that if you don't keep going and going and going, you will fall off. And that's
faith is our loyalty to our Savior.
Well, yeah, let me throw that up on screen real quick.
Which is our loyalty to the Savior, becomes stronger as it is tested against the opposition we face here in mortality.
I kind of just say I don't like the idea of faith being loyalty to anyone. Because faith is a belief system. It's not a binding thing to an individual. Right?
It's triggering for us because they've used the term loyalty so often now when preaching the most extreme version of unquestioning obedience to the general authorities, that you must show your loyalty. And they conflate it with loyalty to God. So perhaps that's us bringing our own baggage from other speakers to that.
Anyway,
but yes, absolutely. It's not. It's in the sense of God, it's loyalty to a person because God allegedly doesn't change and is the embodiment of all that's good. So that's okay. But it can be a tricky word. I agree. Yeah.
Because we keep nourishing it. We keep actively applying our faith, and we never give up. On the other hand, if we fail to use faith and its convincing power by acting upon it, we become less sure of things we once held sacred, less confident of things we once knew were true, temptations that would never have enticed us begin to look less appalling and more appealing.
And there's
The fire of yesterday's testimony can warm us for only so long. It needs constant nourishment to keep burning brightly.
So it's that constant nourishment thing. I want to throw David Richards' comment on here, just to make a quick point. He said he doesn't look 85, but he's in the running to be the first international prophet. Not true. Not true, David, unfortunately. Or Dave. The first international prophet of the church was John Taylor, who was an Englishman. I'll have you know. And we've not had any others since. But third prophet of the church, John Taylor, Englishman. So already had one. He would be the first non-native English speaker to be president of the church, I would believe.
Oh, we burst his bubble.
That's all right. That's what we're here to do. We're here to push back against apologetics. We're here to push back. We're just
the
here
ruthless sword of truth.
Indeed, indeed. Anyway, yeah. Someone said it needs constant nourishment, and that's what I am picking up on here. Is this idea you need to constantly reaffirm these things to yourself? Whereas actually, if you would think if these things are true, then you wouldn't need to constantly reaffirm to yourself that they're true. It would be, I don't know.
It's all very hard work. It's just hard work sticking with this thing. And you just think, as I sit in my decimated branch now with the remnants of another branch that the church has chopped up, you just think, why is it so hard? You know, I was speaking again this Sunday to a dear friend who's been super faithful all her life, has senior roles in the stake. Wonderful children. It's again the same conversation. How are your kids doing? They are amazing. They're doing so well. They're great. I'm so proud of them. Are they still involved in church? No. You know, we raise amazing people, but we lose them. And it shouldn't be that hard to hold on to our people and to grow and fill the world. If they weren't doing so many things that self-sabotage, if we just had the gospel as Dieter teaches it and some of the others that we've heard, and they really believed that was the primary emphasis, and they stopped lying and being hypocritical about money, this could be an amazing religion. It would fill the world. It would replace Christianity. It would be working to its strengths. But it's so difficult, and a lot of these talks about the struggle, the hard work, the stay in, you know, just and they're doing it more gently these days than when President Kimpel and others would give you a list of literally 50 things that every Mormon should be doing, or it's not going to work. You know,
the 14 fundamentals in doing X, Y, and Z, right? Yeah.
But it hasn't gone away. It's still there that you just have, you know, what it costs to actually make this keep working is the hamster wheel of all the busy work that they have all listed. You know, he went on with some lovely, what I loved about this talk is,
one moment before we go on to the loveliness, which we need to, and then we need to wrap up. We have a very important request from the chat. Very important. Long-time fan of the show, Spencer Davis, has said, Nemo or Peter, can you say, can I get a bottle of water? Can I have that from you, please, Peter? Thank you.
Can I get a bottle of water?
There we go.
Or in Cockney, can I get a bottle of water?
There we go. Bottle of water. Anyway, right.
That's how my neighbours speak.
Indeed. Okay, so let's get on to the loveliness. Let's do it. Okay, here we go.
Yeah. So I love this. One of the things I've missed the most from the good bits of the religion in the 70s and 80s was how much it emphasized everyone has their own unique talents and the challenge and purpose for your life. And those things were constantly emphasized. Find your talents, develop them. They're unique to you. And find your purpose in life. And then it's got replaced by these control freaks. There is only one covenant path. You will walk in lockstep. We will tell you what it involves, not you will work it out for yourself in collaboration with God and amplifying your individuality. So I just warmed my heart that he's bringing back the idea of find your talents. And he goes on to something which I found genuinely innovative about how to frame that, which I loved. But to begin with, this is the Mormonism I believe in. You are a blessed being of light, a spirit child of an infinite God, and you bear within you a potential beyond your own capacity to imagine. And he talked about trailing clouds of glory. Your origin story is divine, and so is your destiny. Our purpose is to become gods. And whether we do that, you know, through tech and become just advanced alien species that can create life, which we're on the verge of now, or through, you know, a spiritual journey of this religion is actually true on some level. What an amazing, positive, empowering thing. Your talents might be small and simple things that bring to past great things. So he talked about, what if you feel you haven't got talents? What if you don't think there's anything special about you and other people seem to have so much? I love this. He said, think of all the small things you do that really make a difference to people. Just all part of just being a nice person, really. He talked about being a peacemaker, sustaining leaders, sincere compliments, forgiving, repenting, enduring, connecting with children. I love that. That is such a sign of a good soul, that they get on great with kids, you know, and can just play with them and accept them as people. Explaining things simply, he said, and lots of other things. These are the talents that make a big
JFN's
difference.
brought up, did you talk about sustaining leaders being a gift?
Well, exactly.
I mean,
But
that feels a
in a
little bit
nice way, you
self-serving.
could
As an
say. I
apostle, it
know, of
feels a little
course it is.
self-serving to go, hey,
Yeah.
guys, you know what's a real gift from
Yeah.
God? Your
Yeah, it
ability
always
to
is.
say yes to me having this job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
But
does a little bit.
in a healthy way, you know, supporting people in their leadership roles. So I love that. I just thought, if you can have a punchline to a session of conference, that is it. Not constantly stressing you out that you aren't doing the spectacular. Just to appreciate those simple things of being a decent person. You do not need religion to have any of those. To just be in tune with children, to be kind, to be a peacemaker, to be helpful, you know, and give sincere compliments. I mean, these are the qualities of someone who is eligible. You know, I've got my new sixth form students are starting to get into the dating game, and we're having some conversations about it in our art lessons, and how maybe McDonald's isn't great for a first date. We're all trying to advise them. And you know, the peers are like workshopping through, is this a good idea for a first date and that. But I just think what my great privilege as a teacher, and particularly at a school that's for kind of the brighter kids who are much more focused on education, so it is a selection, is to spend every day with the young people of the 21st century, almost none of whom are religious. And they are just brilliant. They're intelligent, they're kind, they want to live decent lives. They are going to be incredible dads and husbands. And it's because they have these kinds of qualities. It's being nice ultimately helps you win, being a kind, compassionate person. And if that's the best a religion can do for you, that is a great thing. And Mormons on the whole have a reputation of being good colleagues, of being nice people. Now, we fully understand all the dysfunctions that can be part of that as well. And some people turn out as very nasty, dysfunctional people. But at its best, this is what our religion will do for you. And Dieter Uchtdorf gets it, and he teaches it. And that's why I look forward to him being president of the church. Who will be followed then by David Bednar, who will screw it all up. But we'll see.
Yeah, okay. So what I really appreciate that. Thanks for sharing that, Peter. I want to address a comment before we wrap up, which is Morgan VA has asked, very important, what's the best item combo for a Tesco meal deal? Now, we're not going to answer that here. We're not going to answer that question here. What I will say is, if you have those kinds of questions for me, if you want to jump down to the link in the description and consider signing up to my Patreon, I do monthly Q&As with patrons to talk about very important questions like this, as well as talk about the direction of the channel, talk about ideas you have for videos, discuss things with those who are signed up to Patreon. So go down to that link. Supports me, allows me to do all this sort of stuff, put this sort of stuff out free for anyone who wants to watch it. But yeah, we will then talk, Morgan. I will see you there, and we'll talk about the best combo for a Tesco meal deal. Bring that question. I will answer it. There we go. Okay, Peter, let's wrap this up. We had a pattern that has still continued. We noticed this last time, the time before. There was a pattern in the opening session of conference, which is an opening prayer, which is a general authority 70. An apostle speaks, then a woman speaks, So a general officer of the church, a female. Then you get a GA70 or an apostle, then an apostle or a GA70, then a GA70, then a member of the First Presidency who's not conducting, but they've not done that this time. That's where it's changed. We got Uchtdorf instead closing it up. Is that foreshadowing that he's going to end up in the First Presidency? Probably not. He doesn't seem like the right sort of fit for that First Presidency. Oakes and Bednar are chummy, and they're aligned on a lot of these sorts of things. So, and then you get a closing prayer by a General Authority 70. And that pattern has continued, broadly speaking, uninterrupted for the past few conferences now. So there we are. Thank you very much, Peter, for joining us.
Yeah,
Have you got
just
one final thought?
thought.
Sure. I thought
That's
you might.
it. So, Carl Hurst, lawyer. Gary Stevenson, business administration. Tracy Browning, financial services. Barcelos, business administration. Brik Eyre, medical businessman. Johnson, forensic accountant. Uchtdorf, pilots and MBA. Cavalcante, the guy who gave the closing prayer, administrative law. This is who runs our church. This is why it is dying. All businessmen, all lawyers, or occasionally a doctor, exactly as we discussed last session. That's it. These are the people chosen to lead. It is a corporation, and that is where their heart is. It is not in religion.
On that pool
not in
that we will
philosophy.
see the next apostle come forward.
Yeah.
Cool. Right. Well, thank you very much.
They've created a clone oligarchy. Yeah.
Thank you
Cool.
very much,
I'll
Peter.
see you later, dude.
I'll catch you later. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. 850 people are currently watching this, which is wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone, for choosing to spend some of your time with me. If you want more analysis, I will be here right after the next session of conference, which is probably in about 3 hours' time. And until then, make sure you hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe if you want to be notified for the next live stream. And I will see you then. Take care, everyone. Bye now.